Welcome back to Brains Gone Bold. We're happy to have you with us as always. We have some interesting things to talk about today, I think. Jeanine, I'm loving your shirt again today. Lots of truth behind that shirt. For those of you who may be listening and not watching, as you hopefully know, Jeanine has a whole wardrobe of what we call sarcastaware, with all kinds of messages that make me laugh.
Maria, what about witty wear?
We can go with that too. Anyway, back to what I was saying. For those listening and not watching, although you should be watching, go to YouTube and watch because you can see Jeanine's wardrobe. It says sarcastic, awkward, and sweary.
All things that absolutely describe me.
They do. They really do. Things we love about you, Jeanine.
Sure. I don't know that everybody would say the same, but that's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So for today, I think we want to pick back up on a previous episode conversation that we were having about the idea of quitting. And we talked about all kinds of things around quitting sports teams, quitting jobs. Yeah, all different situations and how we feel about that. But we didn't talk about relationships. And I think, it could get a little sticky in talking about that. But whether it be friendships or family relationships or romantic relationships, exploring kind of how do you know when it's appropriate to quit that relationship person.
Which is even harder than when we were talking about jobs and we felt like we had unlocked this key to when it's okay.
Yes.
And I don't think it applies here.
No.
I mean, I think it can, but I don't think it covers the whole. So like the shortcut version of we said, if your values are not aligned, it's okay to move on, to choose something else. Especially when you're talking to your kids and trying to help your kids understand, we want them to commit to something and to really be into it. But the deciding factor goes back to values. Now we're talking about people. Whether it's your friends, your boyfriend, girlfriend, even just, you said one that I think is a real big one for me, your family. Just because you're born into a family, they're automatically supposed to be your closest allies, and that's not always the case. So, that is sticky. I like that word. It is sticky or potentially sticky.
So where do you want to head with this?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I immediately think I do start with friendships. Like in my own brain, when we first started talking, even about the quitting, you think about the things that you spend the most time with. And sometimes that's our friends more than our family, especially when you get to be adults, right? And so unless, you have kids and what have you. But I think of, and Luis, our producer, was in here and he was asking me like what our topics were going to be today. And I mentioned that. And he said, from what angle? Are you thinking about it from like people ghosting you? And I was like, oh, that's an angle,
Right.
And I could be the same thing though, right? So I've been in friendships where particularly when you start working with somebody and you're like, I love this person. And then you start hanging out. But the more you hang out with them, you're like, I do not love this person. Right. And so, how do you then, because you're going to still see them at work, you're still, in that situation with them. And so when he said ghosting, I did think of one where there was a person that, again, super enjoyed, incredibly like just entertaining and super entertaining person. But the more time we spent together, the more I realized they probably had a problem with alcohol. And it was overwhelming. There's a Friends episode where, do you remember Bobby? Fun Bobby? Remember that episode?
Oh, yes.
Fun Bobby, right?
Oh, yes.
So where Fun Bobby, then they were like, every story started with, I was so wasted, right? That's what it was like. It was like a similar situation where every time, whatever. And I'm not saying that I wasn't drinking, like I'm holier than thou, definitely having some drinks, but not in the same way and not every time. And so at some point, I just stopped inviting and then going when I was invited. Right. So that became more. And then when you'd see them at work, it was like, oh, hey, good to see you. And then you keep it moving.
Yeah.
And
what, did it become awkward at all? Or did this person address you about it?
Yes. Not only was it awkward, it was awkward for me and obviously for them, to the point where they asked me about it. And this is where, like, I'd love to have this discussion, Maria, because I found myself with like a question that we've asked about, feedback for somebody, and do you say it when it's going to hurt them? Not wanting to tell them the truth, not wanting to say, I think you're an alcoholic, or I don't want to be around your alcoholism. Like, it's not fun for me. Or, when you drink too much, this starts happening and that's uncomfortable. And I don't know why I didn't feel like it was, I didn't know them well enough, I think, to give them that kind of. And so I just said something like, oh gosh, I've been so busy. And as you know, work is looking like this. And so when I go home, I'm just spent, like I'm just not, And in hindsight, though, I do feel like it would have been kinder for me to be truthful. I don't know.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good. I actually was watching, I don't know if you pay attention to Simon Sinek at all. And I
know him, but
very small amounts. Every once in a while he'll pop up on my feed. And just yesterday, he was having an interview with someone where he said almost exactly what you just did, which is, it is kind to give someone tough feedback if you're doing it in a way that is intended, in a good way, you're being respectful about it and that sort of thing. It is kind to give someone tough feedback. And I had to sit with that for a minute because it's kind of hard for us to process those words together.
Yeah.
But I think in your case, that's right. I think with that said, I can understand why that would be difficult, depending on the kind of how close you were with her and so forth. I think probably what I would have said is something along the lines of, I just, with so much going on at work and everything, I'm just not really into drinking that much, so make it about you in terms of like, you don't want to be drinking that much. And I think that could have become a mirror. Maybe. In a way.
Right. It could have been a good opportunity.
You were being truthful. You were calling it out in a different way without saying you're an alcoholic. Now, was it appropriate though, for you to be the person who calls it out? I don't know.
I mean,
but yeah,
I made a choice obviously at the time. And I think now it's been a number of years, but I do think that like their life, unfortunately, they continued to drink heavily and it showed. They lost their job because of it, like so many different things. And so I think back and think, oh my gosh, I could have, out of kindness, said something. But here's the reality. When you give somebody that kind of feedback or say, even using your creative approach of, I don't really want to drink anymore, there's this holier than thou that could potentially, especially if you're not in a place to hear it yet, like you haven't recognized that you've got a problem with alcohol or whatever. And somebody's saying this to you, like what's their problem? Right. And I felt like it could have become more awkward and even more like, or it wasn't contentious. It could have become contentious. And, so I just wanted to avoid all of that. And at the end of the day, Maria, here's where it really comes back to. I didn't value them enough as a friend to really care to lose that friendship. And so that's where I wanted to bring it back. Like for me, thinking about, losing friends, I've been on the other side of the fence where there was this woman that I really, really dug. Like I just thought that she was the bee's knees. She was smart. We worked together for a number of years. I'd seen her trajectory. I was younger than her, not by much, but enough where I emulated some of the things that she was doing. And I felt like we were becoming friends. And then all of a sudden, just completely cut me off. And I was like, what's happened? And I was moving from out of state, and other friends that I had, we were putting plans in place to stay in touch and what have you. And I remember sending her a card, getting no response, and then sending her another card, like a note. We still work together, and No response. And I don't mean something goofy. I mean, like, I took the time to go, I really value our friendship. If I've done something, please accept my apology. I didn't
Yeah.
mean to. It wasn't my intention. I'm sorry. I don't know what I did. If you can tell me what I did, then, I'd love to try to repair this. Nothing. Years later, we were at a mutual friend's bachelorette party, and she was there and came up to me, was very warm, was very, friendly, and almost acted like, and it was very confusing to me. It was very confusing to me. And we knew it was like this whole weekend. And I knew we had other experiences that we were going to be put together. And so I asked her, and I said, here's my recollection of this situation 10 years before. And what happened? And she told me that the way I told stories, she didn't like. She didn't like how, I can't describe it any other way, but the way she said it was, you tell these stories and I don't find them entertaining. And I don't enjoy hanging around with you when you're telling stories. Like, you have to have the spotlight. That was it. I have to have the spotlight. And I was like, oh, because I can see myself that way. I can see the fact that, I can suck the air out of a room because I want to be on show. I need an audience. Like, I replay these things. And I just remember being so hurt by it. Like, it almost hurt more hearing her reason than having her ghost me.
Yeah.
Right. And so
became more personal.
It's who I am. This dynamic, and not to say that I can't change and whatever, but I like who I am. And so when she stuck at the very core of the who I am piece, it was really hurtful because I just liked her so much. And I still like her so much. I still like this woman. And so what I would say to you, Maria, is in thinking about those two things where at first I was ghosted by somebody and I didn't know, and it was really hurtful. And, I felt like I was begging her to be my friend. And then finding out 10 years later why she didn't like me anymore. I kind of want to go back to the ghosting piece where I never ever saw her again in my life and didn't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that was hurtful because that was such a personal, to your part, core of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? We're not for everyone.
No.
I know that's easier said than done.
It is.
But
right.
Who we are is not for everyone. And so it's her loss. Again, I know that's easier said than done, of course. But yeah.
Right.
I have two things that are coming to mind, and both of them can be tough. So what are your thoughts on, there are actually a lot of people, and it's more, I believe, younger generation now.
Okay.
I could be wrong in this, but that's my understanding, who are making decisions to be estranged from family members. And, you said at the beginning, we were talking about, family, that, that's tough. They're supposed to be your blood and supposed to have your back and that sort of thing. I've watched multiple now. I've either listened to podcasts or watched multiple shows on the fact that this is happening in record numbers where people are estranged from parents or siblings or whatever that might be, because they're simply saying yeah, you might be my blood, but you're an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would not put up with this behavior from you if you were someone else. So why do I have to put up with this? Because I was born into this, and and I've watched and listened to things that talk about the impacts of that generally on society, even like the breakdown of the family and, all of the things that can go along with it. Do you know anyone who has done this, and what is your take on cutting ties with family members?
So I do know a few people, and it wasn't I guess it was a conscious choice. I'd say maybe it wasn't, but I know some siblings that do not have a relationship with one another. I will say, my own sister, we consciously make the effort to be in one another's lives. I also know sisters that are inseparable. absolutely inseparable. And, you see the gamut. But the friends that I can think of that are not and do not have a relationship with their siblings and or parents, it's so weird for me because of the relationships I do have with my mom and my sister. And of course, by extension, my nieces and nephews, that for people that don't, I find myself trying to convince them to repair that relationship, which is not my place. But so it's my own, like you asked, how do I feel about that? Like, it makes me uncomfortable. I want them to be happy. But why? Just because you are born into a family should not make a difference. It's how people treat you. It's how, they support you, build you up versus breaking you down. And so it shouldn't matter that you're related to somebody and they're treating you like crap. It should be okay for them to make a choice. And to not be in it. Yeah. So while my actions say different, I do feel like it is okay. What about you? What do you think?
I think it's okay too. I do. I think it's complicated. Sure. I really do think it's complicated, but I agree with the perspective of like, why do you have to put up with being treated poorly?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't. Now, there is another side to it, which is in some cases, and this has been part of the discussions that are happening, the threshold of what you'll put up with.
Okay.
Should that be higher?
Okay.
So meaning like.
Because it's family or just in general?
Because it's family.
Okay.
So, a lot of folks who are doing this are sometimes doing it for reasons that others might see minor. Others might see like, so they're basically like, I'm not going to put up with that anymore and gone. Like almost like not a big deal. Now with that said, I'm sure there's lots of things that happen behind the scenes that people don't know about, all of the things, of course. But I guess, where's the threshold again in terms of like, how long do you put up with a bad behavior? Does it depend on what the behavior is? And if there are kids involved or not, there's a lot of factors that depend. It depends, but
I know.
Yeah, that's going to be my answer today.
I'll allow it. I'd like for you to find other words for it though. So when you were sitting here and you're talking about the threshold, I started thinking about not accountability, responsibility. I'll describe it and then you tell me what the word is. So for families, traditional in my mind doesn't mean it's somebody else's description of traditional, but the way I describe a family, I'm going to use mom, dad, 2 kids. Okay. For this example. And mom and dad have a responsibility to those 2 kids to feed them, clothe them, love them, treat them well. And in turn, those kids, in my opinion, have an obligation to respect the parents for what they've sacrificed for them, the feed them, because it's much less expensive to raise yourself than it is somebody else with you. And so I think about from that perspective, right? So that's just the basics. So then we get to the point where mom and dad are feeding, loving, doing all the things, but they're also beating the crap out of you. They're drinking too much and then taking it out on you every time something doesn't go their way. And again, beating the crap out of the kid. And so the kid is now, let's just fill in the blank, 9 years old, recognizes that this is not the way they should be treated. And so what did they get to do? Their options are limited. They can, talk about abuse, whatever. So now we're 16 or 18 and my entire life, my parents on the surface have done all these great things for me. They have, paid for me for the after school care. They've done these things. However, they were shitheads. They were verbally abusive and sometimes physically abusive. And I'm done. Like I'm out. And on the outside, to your point, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. On the outside, somebody's like, your parents were so good to you. They did so much for you. And like, yeah, but every single night my dad crawled into my bed or my mother, was a raging alcoholic and would rip my hair out of me, like all the things. Right. So who has, the rights here?
And I don't think it's up to anyone else to judge. That's how I feel. I really don't. Anyone from the outside cannot judge because they don't know the experience that happened. I would say that I am having a little bit, I guess, of a visceral reaction as you're talking about, they made sacrifices, they put food on the table, they did all of these kind of like financial related things for you. To me, you decided to have a child. Along with deciding to have a child comes responsibilities that are financial in nature and sacrifices in nature. That child did not decide to be born.
Yep.
So to put responsibility on the child to respect and love and do X, Y, and Z for the parents because the parents sacrificed and provided, to me is BS. Yeah. Like that's part of the job description. And like,
what about earning it though?
What do you mean?
So, I feel like my parents earned that from me because of not just the financial sacrifices that they may have made, but they did show me a lot of love. They taught me lessons. I learned from experience and all of that. So I do think some of it's earned, but you're right. I mean, I didn't ask to be born period. I'm glad I was.
I think I'm happy you were born too.
Words of affirmation.
That, what you just said is so important and such an important distinction, which is you had that love and caring part.
Yes, for sure. Not everybody does, right?
What I'm saying is like in those situations where there's abuse or there's other things that could fall into that, just because the parents provided financially for and that sort of thing does not make up for, give them an excuse to, and does not give them a pass to have treated their children poorly.
I agree.
And so what I'm saying is like those things alone, to me, are not a factor in the child should respect and so on and so forth. It's like, yes, the parents earn the respect by providing a warm, loving environment where that child can grow and thrive.
Yes.
Regardless of the money situation. So, I guess I could go back and
so I agree with you. And I want to state very clearly that in no way was I trying to imply that because the parents sacrificed anything, whatever it was, that gives them a pass, because I couldn't be further from the truth. I worry for that 9-year-old that has less choices than that 16 and 18-year-old, just because of whatever. So I do. Yep. From that standpoint, though, I want to get back to the, family members, making choices. And so it's such it's a personal topic, and we all have our own feelings about, family members and stuff. And so it's hard for me. I will say this, my father's side of the family, my mother's side of the family, very different. We had a much closer relationship with my mother's side of the family. That includes cousins, extended cousins, whatever. There's a few scattered on my dad's side, but very few. Like I could count on a handful of the folks that I still have any and did as a child. So we as a family made a decision of which, members were going to get our time and attention. And it happened to be my mother's side. As we've gotten older and, family members move out of state and different things happen, I have a sense of obligation. And it's a sense of obligation because my mother is now the matriarch of that family. Like her sister has passed, her brother has passed. She is the oldest one of that particular line now. And so a lot of my cousins lean on my mom. And so I think so my sense of obligation is that because they see my mom in a certain way, that I want to try to make her available for them and what have you. But I also have that they should be doing more to see my mom and to go out of their way because she's the one that's left. And that's such a warped it's just the way you know what I mean? It's the way I was raised, and, that family is everything. But I also see it from that other perspective of just because their blood doesn't make it. more important than the people that all of their lives have shown you love and respect and care, and they're not related to you. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that they're family.
Yeah.
What does that do?
I think what you're touching on for me, there's a lot, but the word obligation comes up, and I struggle so much with that word, which is, I don't want to be obligated to or for anyone except my child. And I do not want my child to ever feel obligated to or for me. I do not ever want him to feel that way. And so when you're talking about, I think you're even talking about nieces and nephews being obligated to your mother, right?
It's my own protectionism, right, of my mom.
That's so foreign and different than what I believe and feel. And I probably need to like examine the why behind that. And the word obligation, I struggle with, not just as it relates to family or relationships. Like, I struggle with it in general.
Okay.
Like,
it's one of those heavy words.
Expectations, like people expecting things, to me is like,
you should totally examine that. I'm just kidding. I mean, I can't think of one right now, but obligation and expectations. Interestingly, it feels, I'm proud when there's certain obligations and or expectations placed upon me and I can deliver on it. Like, really? I don't feel the weight of, now, do I feel like sometimes they can be unreasonable? Absolutely. And what I'm describing, like with my mom, I feel like she has earned that place. And so I want others to reciprocate, because when I say earned, I literally said to her the other day that one of her biggest talents is how well she cares for other people. And she really puts a premium on that and goes out of her way to try to make that happen. And so I feel a sense of obligation to make sure others do that for her. And so, and that's what I was trying to say when I was describing like the different family dynamic and what have you. But we could probably in therapy talk about the word obligation and expectation for you and why that gives you that moment. But this is not the therapy day.
And I actually am perfectly comfortable with how I feel about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you said you made me figure out why you feel. And I know the reason I feel that way is because it was always seen as a good thing in my family.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I think part of it, you use the word the weight, like the weight of it. I do think there's a lot to it that I am aware of. It's never going to change for me. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I do know that, in my day-to-day life, I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, whether that is real or perceived. And so anything else added to that is just weight that I simply can't carry. So more expectations, more obligations on top of what I already have on my plate is just, it's not feasible to me.
Okay.
And I don't want it.
And I think that's fair. And I'm glad that you know where your weight barrier is, how much you can carry, and anything more, what's going to break it for you. And I think, that's part of being a responsible adult, is understanding where that is. And otherwise, you'll break. And how good can you be to other people if you can't do all the things, like you said, real or perceived, whatever. But you've said, these are the things within my purview that I'm willing to take on. Anything outside of that? Sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
So back to the relationships, family and or, friends.
Yes.
It hurts
so I have
me.
A question.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
This is like a little bit side detour. On the friend side, and maybe this even applies to family as well, but and I know we do not want to go into the realm of discussing politics or anything like that. We're not going to do that.
Yep.
I am curious if you had a friend who you learned had vastly different political views and values than you realized, and those were completely different than yours. What would you do about that?
I do have friends that have vastly different beliefs and values than I do. And it is very difficult for me because just like we said before, my values, I hold very dearly. And with that being said, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to people, I didn't always have politics as something that was, in my worldview. When you're coming up, it's very rare that children and or young adults really care about politics. I know there's some that very much do, but I wasn't one of them. I didn't really watch the news. It just wasn't. I still don't. I now go out of my way to avoid the news, but I made those friendships most of the times prior to those things being important, right? Now, as an adult, like a serious adult, meaning I've been an adult for a while. This isn't new. If it was a new friendship, right, instead of one of those old established ones that I've had for a while, if it was a new friendship and I learned that that person was like just really the complete opposite of the spectrum, like kicking puppies is okay kind of moments, then I probably would not continue that friendship. But existing friendships where we've got those differences, I go out of my way not to have conversations where those differences are going to be exposed. And that can be really challenging. Right. I mean, I've got friends who do have similar views to myself, and we talk about politics and we talk about worldview and we talk about that kind of stuff. And it's freeing to be able to speak to somebody so openly. We don't always agree, but at the end of the day, our values are the same. Right. So we might have a different perspective, but our values are the same. Where the folks that I can't go deep with like that, it ends up, I don't want to say damaging, but it definitely impacts the friendship. I just try not to lose the friendship as a result, which is tough to navigate. What about yourself?
I struggle with this one too. Similar to you, I believe there are friends in my circle who, again, I would not have known their political views, was not something that ever came into my purview, nor anything we ever discussed, cared about, or carried with us in any way in our relationship. That, in this day and age of social media, you get kind of an inside track sometimes into the way people think that maybe they wouldn't have previously shown. And that has happened. I have become aware of things for a couple of people that are really surprising. I'll just put it there. Really surprising and super disappointing. To the point where, going back to kind of how do you know when it's time to quit? I have been struggling. There's one in particular, a person who I really, really adored. And now I know this thing that is so contrary to what I thought.
Yeah.
And it's so contrary to my values that it's like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully or not, it's not someone who was ever like a part of my daily. it was someone who I would catch up with every so often. But when we did, it's like no time had passed. We really connected and so forth. So like the fact that more time has passed is I guess, okay. And it easily and very well may end up resulting in us not ever talking again.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's right or not.
And I don't know if it is either. But at the end of the day, the only thing that defines for each of us, all of us, what is right is just how we feel. Right. And so if it's so insurmountable that it's more painful to pursue and continue to have the relationship knowing this thing than if you just kind of let it fade into the darkness, then, you have your answer. I can't imagine. There was never a time in my life that I would think that an external situation could impact my love for, somebody. And it still doesn't. However, my willingness to be around people where their values are so different is hard. It's harder than I thought it would be. And we do live in a very polarized society right now. And because of social media, that those differences are even more exacerbated. They are even more, there's lights shining, and all of the things that used to be in the darkest crevices of the world now have bright spotlights on them. And so it's hard to avoid, unless you stay off of all of social media altogether and never watch TV, never walk past anybody else watching TV. You know what I mean? Like it
actually sounds kind of nice.
There's some tribes that still live that way. And there have been times where I think a vacation there would be amazing, but we would ruin it. We would ruin it for them. The more people that go and fly. But I mean, in all seriousness, you can't avoid those topics. And so it's just in your face all the time. And so making the best decision you can make for yourself in order to maintain your sanity, as well as your respect for yourself. And again, those values, I just think that's where we just keep landing. And so I don't know. It's really tough. It's really tough because just like when I was talking about that situation before about feeling like a person that I really cared about didn't want to be my friend anymore, was really hurtful. It was more hurtful once I realized what it was. And the person that was an alcoholic, me not telling them. How do you have a conversation about somebody's beliefs without offending them? So either you're going to ruin it probably either way, because if it's so important to you that their beliefs are so different from yours that you want to have that conversation, then be prepared either way to lose that friendship or to lose that relationship or whatever it was. And I don't know that I am there with any, you know what I mean? I don't know that I've gotten to the point where I want to have the discussion and go, I absolutely and positively feel 180 degrees differently from what you believe. And as a result, we can't be friends. I'm not ready to have those conversations. Maybe I should be, and that makes me a lesser person, but I'm not. I'm just not.
Okay. Hey, self-awareness. It's important.
Indeed it is. Indeed.
Oh, so again, we didn't solve for anything, not that we were intending to. I think, the idea of when do you know a relationship has hit its end or it's time to let it go. And
let's solve it.
What that means.
Let's solve it right now. When you know,
all right,
when it's in the pit of your stomach that it doesn't work for you anymore.
That was a big one. Yeah.
Right. I mean, because we know, it's just you said it. And I can't remember exactly the words that you used when I was talking about, the friend. And you said, we're not for everybody. We're not for everybody.
Yeah.
Just because you meet somebody and you like them and they like you doesn't mean that you have to be together forever. Things change, whether it's romantic, whatever. The only ones that we seem to be stuck with are the family members, but we've also learned that you don't have to be stuck with them either. So, so there you have it. If you feel it in the pit of your stomach, walk away.
Okay. We can take that for sure. For sure. That's an intuition thing, but we can come back to that too.
Yeah, for sure. It is a tough topic though. It is definitely a tough topic. It makes me feel some kind of way.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up this topic for today. I'm sure there's plenty more we could talk about as it relates to this, but thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah,
you always
too.
help me to think about things a little differently. So I appreciate that as always. Thank you to those listening or watching. Always appreciate you being here. Jeanine and I like to talk amongst ourselves, but we appreciate knowing that there's others who are in on this and listening too. So please feel free to chime in on the conversation. Let us know your thoughts. Like, subscribe, share, email us, all of the things.
I do want to add on that as far as, we want to bring you in the conversation. I know we've said we're not kidding, whatever. When we get a comment, we're like, hey, did you see? Like, we are so excited about it. And it makes us think. There have been some really, and thank you guys, some really thoughtful and personal sharing that we've been privileged to receive from each of you. And so please, we want to have the conversation. It's important to us and it's valuable to us. So
it's why we do this. Yeah. All right. Well, we will see you next time on Brains Gone Bold.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.